attendees, 37, I think, participants in all. So others will be watching elsewhere. Vice-Chancellor, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research and Innovation, Registrar, members of the executive leadership, deans, heads of departments, family and friends of Dr. Jono Davy, his wife, Lindsay, children, Liam and Ella May, mother, Colleen, sister, Nicole Jennings, and her husband, Mike, and other family members, John, Gail, Brad, Haley Jackson, and Haley Jackson. Family and friends of Mr. Andrew Todd, his wife, Louise, daughter, Ashley, and son, Matthew. And the family and friends of Ben Ryan, his wife, Pam, his parents, Dave and Jane Ryan, and his sister, Hannah Ryan, who is joining us from England. All community partners who are here today, members of Mufuzo Boxing Club, members of Kulasande Sports Development, members of Rhodes University Community Engagement, members of Gadra Education, members of the Local Football Association, members of the Eastern Cape Academy of Sport, members of the Department of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, members of the Southern Eastern Districts Rugby Union, members of the Makana Municipality, members of Asiye Itafuleni, members of Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing, members of the Center for Biological Control, and members of the local education institutions and support structures. Colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the 2019 Vice-Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award Lecture. The Vice-Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award is a prestigious and competitive annual award which recognizes meaningful and committed partnerships between the members of the university and community partners in the areas of teaching, learning, and research, where human and material resources of the university have been combined with those found in the local communities in order to contribute to sustainable communities, and in the process, acknowledging the agency of the communities. Rhodes University has become a leading, engaged university with a number of internationally renowned engaged research programs and meaningful community engaged learning partnerships. Today, it is my honor to introduce to you the winners of the 2019 Vice-Chancellor's Community Engagement Award, Dr. Jono Davy, Mr. Andrew Todd, and Mr. Ben Ryan, from the Department of Human Kinetics and Ergonomics, HKE, who will be presenting a virtual lecture reflecting on their journey of embedded community engagement. Individually and as a team, Jono Davy, Andrew Todd, and Ben Ryan have been acknowledged for their collective efforts to shift the HKE department towards a more engaged approach to research and teaching and learning, towards evolving a philosophy based on holism and the systems approach, underpinned by clear values and expectations to guide their department's community engagement activities. Consequences of their 8-year revolutionary or evolutionary, could be revolutionary as well, journey with community engagement have been the integration of theory with practice through service learning and engaged research. During this journey, students were moved physically, psychologically, and intellectually from the confines of a laboratory to, among other things, the lived reality and experience of communities and their work situations, the development of collaborative partnerships with relevant stakeholders, and a shift from disciplinary specificity to transdisciplinary learning approaches. While we highlight the individual contributions of each of the recipients to community engagement today, we also acknowledge that the progress made was possible because of the team effort and the support of other individuals in and outside of the HKE department for looking out the ivory tower window and making transformative shifts in their thinking and actions. Dr. Davy completed his undergraduate degree at Rhodes University in 2006, majoring in human kinetics and ergonomics and organizational psychology, which he passed with distinction. He went on to complete his honors master's doctoral degrees in human kinetics and ergonomics and has been lecturing in the department since 2013. His research interests focus predominantly on understanding sleep-wake behavior and the effects of sleep loss on human performance in different settings, such as aviation, and includes research on the sleep-wake behavior of school-going adolescents, students, and more recently, academics. As a lecturer, Dr. Davy has a strong emphasis on community engagement. He has focused on creating opportunities for students to see the interconnectedness between the different undergraduate courses through the application of systems theory, while offering additional learning opportunities for students through course-embedded service learning and community engagement activities. Additionally, Dr. Davy is an executive committee member for the management of the Baartman District Academy of Sports in Joza. He has always been an active participant in the Trading Live for Mandela initiative at Rhodes University, where his team has taught community members boxing, physical education, self-defense, and basic first aid. Nationally, he is the president of the Ergonomics Society of South Africa and the editor of the Society's journal, Ergonomics South Africa. The second recipient, Mr. Andrew Todd, also has a long history at Rhodes University, having completed his undergraduate degree here in 1998 and his MSc in 2001. Currently, he is a senior lecturer in the Department of Human Kinetics and Ergonomics. From a research perspective, his focus is on community sport and the application of ergonomics to any context that is locally relevant. His main interest lies in the use of disciplinary knowledge to contribute to a reduction of inequality in our city, province, as well as in the country. Mr. Todd has also served as the president of the South African Ergonomics Society, as well as the network of African Ergonomic Societies, while he is currently serving in his second term as the chair of the International Development for the International Ergonomics Association. Furthermore, Mr. Todd served on the Department of Employment and Labor Technical Committee to develop ergonomics regulations in South Africa, promulgated last year in 2020. Mr. Todd incorporates his real-world experiences into his undergraduate teaching and research groups. Over the years, there has been a shift in the focus of his teaching and learning, as well as research work, from a laboratory setting to one that acknowledges the context within which we live, one that builds relationships and co-constructs research needs and solutions to identified problems. His service learning model is one he has adapted with Dr. Davy and Mr. Ryan, and will be the focus of their lecture this evening. The third recipient, Mr. Ryan, submitted his PhD thesis last year. He has been interested in research that engages more holistically with the local Makana community since embarking on his master's project in 2014. This led to his PhD thesis focus being on the application of ergonomics complex systems tools to resource scarce sporting organizations. He learned about the power of engaged research when his postgraduate research, while successful from the hypothesis testing perspective, it failed to bring the impact and intervention he had hoped for. His research was conducted on the football club and not with the football club, and the realities of the context had not been taken into consideration. While still a student, Mr. Ryan has been active as a teaching assistant, an assistant to the head of department, lecturer, and ergonomics consultant. The trio's presentation tonight will not focus on a single project, but rather their journey from a primarily laboratory-based education and research model to an engaged model that has a focus on working together and with the community to address locally emerging problems in the context of promoting a lifelong passion for human movement amongst students and community. They will provide a framework to change the idea of what the classroom is and where learning occurs or should occur to promote the philosophy of engaged citizenship. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to invite Dr. Jono Davy, Mr. Andrew Todd, and Mr. Ben Ryan to present the 2019 Distinguished Community Engagement Award lecture titled A Work of Time, Reflections on Our Journey to Embedded Engagement. Jono, Andrew, Ryan, Ben, rather, it's over to you. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Deputy Vice-Chancellor, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. You made us look better than we are, I think. So thank you very much for that. Vice-Chancellor, thank you for the privilege of recognizing the work that we have done. It is for us a great honor to be here this evening and to be able to share our ideas and reflections with you, with the DVCs and the rest of the university community, and most importantly, with many of our community partners who are with us here this evening. You will see on our opening slide, in fact, that we have no names. And although we have been made to look very good by the DVC, it is our take and reflection that, in fact, this award should be for the Department of Human Kinetics and Ergonomics, the staff and the students who really are at the heartbeat from the university side of doing the work. And perhaps most importantly, to our community partners, the people who are at the forefront of doing the actual work to build towards transformation in our society. And so we would like to, at the very outset, acknowledge both the department and our community partners, and to suggest that this is as much a recognition of them all as it is of us. And you'll also notice, if you are very observant, that there's a slight change in the title that we have on our slide here, that we have changed to towards. And that is an important change for us as we were reflecting on what we had put together again, that perhaps to suggests that we have made it, whereas towards suggests that we are still working on becoming embedded and having an engagement that is embedded. And that will be reflected in some of what we present to you this evening. We have really 4 parts to the talk tonight. I am going to start with an introduction to what our department actually does. As you have heard the DVC talking about human kinetics and ergonomics, there's very many people who don't understand what this word ergonomics means. And in fact, even what we mean by human kinetics. So I will start with that. Jono will then take us through the evolution and perhaps revolution of the program, as you suggested earlier, DVC, over the years from perhaps a working on people to now our approach of really trying hard to be working with people, after which Ben will do a reflection on his studies and show actually how we have evolved that program and his experiences of working in such a program as a student from that perspective. And then I'll hopefully be able to tie it all together at the end. If we think about human kinetics and ergonomics, or simply HKE, you'll often get people saying, I know what that is. It's those guys who do the gym and they design chairs and computer workstations. And to a degree, that is the case. But in fact, if we look at our discipline, there is a little bit more to us than simply looking at how we design a computer workstation. And I want to give a little bit of insight into that with a couple of slides to start and to contextualize the work that we have been doing. At the heart of what it means to study human kinetics and ergonomics is studying the interaction between humans and systems. That is really what we are interested in, is the response of humans to the stimuli that they receive from the systems within which they exist. And in order to do that, we try and understand, why do humans respond in the way they do? How are those responses brought about physiologically? And what is it, the muscles and the bones, that respond to those stimuli? And that is at the heart of what we try and do. And we try and apply this knowledge of human system interaction to a variety of different contexts. So the focus of our study is really in 3 different areas. We study humans' interactions at work. And yes, that may be in your computer workstation, but may also be like in the slide that we have here, the example of Warwick markets. And those that are familiar with Durban will be familiar with this. The informal economy and the interaction between humans and a very challenging work environment and perceptions of work within that context. To a sports context where we study human system interactions in a variety of different sports. You'll hear about some of those tonight, from rugby to soccer to cricket, and a variety of others as well. And lastly, we look at human system interactions in the context of activities of daily living. People hiking, for example, people going cycling, people doing work in supermarkets, etc. So we really try and cover those 3 key different areas and how humans interact with those systems in that context. Now I want to just pick up on 2 of those to give a highlight of how we actually do that shortly. So what is our focus? We take a human-centered approach to understanding human systems and their subsystems, their physiological systems, their biomechanical systems, their anatomical systems, to understanding what it is, how it moves, and why humans move in the way that they do. And we use that understanding to understand humans' interactions with each other and humans' interactions with other elements of the world around them. And why we do that ultimately is to try to optimize or balance this interaction so that the outcome of humans' interactions with their systems is the maintenance of health, well-being, and safety, and hopefully through those, the maximization of performance and productivity. So in the sports field, we get the best performance we can, and in the work environment, we get the best productivity that we can. So here is a very quick example of how we would do this. Here we have a picture of Didier Drogba, one of the most famous African soccer players of all time, while he was playing for Chelsea in the UK. He's clutching his leg, and in fact, what he has here is an injury to the back of his leg here, to his hamstring muscles. We would try from a department perspective to teach our students to understand this particular injury that occurred to him holistically. To do that, we need to understand it from a microscopic level all the way through to a macroscopic level. And this is the sort of model that we would use. So at this level of his leg here, we can go down to a cellular and tissue level and look at the tear that has occurred to the hamstring fibers within that particular muscle. And then we can try and understand, how did this injury come about actually happening? In order to understand that, we need to go up to the organ level, and from the organ level up one further level to the system, to the musculoskeletal system level, and back down again. So for example, and I have included this mosquito here because, Vice-Chancellor, you may recall from a presentation of mine that you attended some 6 or 7 years ago that I spoke about runners from West Africa and the fact that the mosquito has had an impact on their musculoskeletal system. Well, Didier Drogba is from West Africa, and the mosquito, from the environmental perspective, so understanding this up here, this environmental factors, has an impact at a cellular level on the type of muscle fiber architecture and the type of muscle fibers that Didier Drogba has, that predisposes him as someone from West African descent to an increased risk of fatigue when they play 90 minutes of high-intensity football. That results in an increased risk of hamstring injuries amongst players who come from West Africa. And if you want to understand why the mosquito does this, you'll have to come and study HKE with us in the department. So there you can see how environmental factors are important in understanding cellular and tissue and organ level factors within humans from a sporting perspective. But we also contrast this with an understanding from an ergonomics perspective, and ergonomics is looking at humans in the work environment. And here we have the very tragic case that many of you are hopefully familiar with, where in South Africa, Life Esidimeni resulted in the death of at least 94 patients. And what we do from this perspective is, again, we apply our understanding of interactions to this. And here is the model that we would use to apply to something like Life Esidimeni and understand the interactions between the humans in that system, the tools and technology that they use, the tasks that are required to be done in order to effectively look after patients, the internal environment within that context, the external environment, and the organizational factors, and how this work system and these interactions have an impact on the processes, the physical, the cognitive, and the social behavioral processes that occur at work, that then feed back to the system and ultimately have an impact on the outcomes, either successful outcomes or undesirable outcomes. And in this case, we could show, and some of our students were doing exactly this work, to show how there were systemic organizational factors that led to active failures in the system from blatant factors that could have been avoided. And if we had taken an ergonomic systems approach to the design of the transfer of patients, in this case, this tragedy would not have happened. And so you can see the type of application that we have for the work that we do. The trick now for us is, how do we get our students to understand these complex systems within which humans interact? That takes us to HFE or HKE within the classroom. We are all about understanding interactions. And if we want to understand interactions between humans and other elements of the system, the first thing we need to do is accept that we need a systems approach, and that we need to understand humans holistically, and we need to understand them holistically, systemically, within context. There is no point in taking them out of their context and studying them in the lab, because as soon as you've done that, the context is different and the response is different and the interaction is different. And so the context becomes vital. We also need to acknowledge emergence, the fact that behavior changes over time. And that if we want to do this successfully, we need to be embedded within the system. And this is where the real challenge for us came. I was brought up in a department where we had a very strong positivist, reductionist research approach, where yes, you might do a in situ study, but you would try and control everything. And you wouldn't dream of actually asking the workers what they thought the solution to the problem actually was. And so for Jono and I, when we started to think about this, we had a model when it came to the classroom that was focused on this group here in red, where we gave lectures, we had group discussions, we did labs, we did field trips, we even did consultancies. But the reality was that our teaching and learning and our research was not embedded it certainly didn't take emergence into account, the fact that behavior today is different to behavior tomorrow. And it was through that challenge that we acknowledged the need, actually, that embedding and emergent require learning in the real world, and that the classroom was no longer enough for us. And it was really then 7 or 8 years ago that we acknowledged that perhaps we needed to take the concepts of community engagement, service learning, and engaged research much more seriously, and think about ways in which we could now actually embed this in our everyday research and our everyday teaching. And it is at this point that I will hand over to Jono now, who will elaborate on this and show how we have gone through this process of trying even to start in community engagement to our embedded engaged research process. Jono, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and good evening to everybody, to family, to friends, DVC, our Vice-Chancellor, colleagues, students, and friends. It's my privilege to be here this evening to share some of our insights with you all around the community engagement, the nuts and bolts of what we did in the early days to where we are today. And so thank you to Andrew for that background. I'm going to focus on the early days and talk about the important role that Trading Live for Mandela Day and Weeks had for our understanding of community engagement, the role of pathfinders, individuals who had come before and had learned how to do community engagement effectively in a mutually beneficial way, and then this concept of answering knocks at the door. So our earlier days in community engagement were focused largely in response to Rhodes University community engagement's calls during Trading Live for Mandela Day, which was aligned with the 67 Minutes for Mandela Day around his birthday. And that evolved into week and into month, and then eventually into the Vuka Makana program, which is what we have today. And what we really learned about our community, our trades with various community partners is that we actually had a lot to offer, and that people were interested in what we did and what we studied and the research that we did. And there were really incredible opportunities for us to speak and to engage with communities, from cooking meals at orphanages to teaching physical education at local schools, to going up to the Center for Biological Control's Vionic facility to do ergonomics risk assessments. And Benita, I saw you on the panelist list here, to doing ergonomics office assessments in Roos, to ECAS lessons up in the Assumption Development Center. But what they were important for is to show us that actually this engaging with people outside of our confines of the department is not as scary as we originally thought. And it was an important lesson for us to be confident in bridging that gap and moving out of the ivory tower, so to speak. And then a knock came at the door from Ashley Westerway from Gather Education, who asked us to get involved in physical education projects up in some schools in Joza. And so the Joza Physical Education Project was initiated in 2014. And this saw students, and you can see Ben there, who was there right at the start, coordinating in 3 different schools in Joza. And we took students through a physical education assessment and followed that up with a sort of 8-week training program, and they did an assessment afterwards. The thing is with this is it was ad hoc, and it was over and above the curriculum. It was over and above our practicals. It was not linked to our curriculum in any way. It was let's go and do this because it's a good thing to do. And we learned a lot from it, but we had some challenges that Andrew will speak to. And one of the ways in which we responded to those challenges, which was largely around getting students to come to the sessions in the afternoon, was to embed it in the life orientation curriculum. And so what I ended up doing is creating a manual for the students that spoke about different elements or different components around physical fitness and what it meant, different elements, and you can see a glossary of terms. And basically we took them through this program where we had pre-exercise testing of different types of motor control, flexibility, speed and strength. At a pre-season, we took them through 6 weeks to 8 weeks of training, teaching them along the lines of how to keep physically active and how to be healthy and why it's important, and then to do a post sort of test. And it was successful to an extent, but it also had its challenges because of the buy-in and the fact that it wasn't aligned with the CAPS curriculum of the school, so it wasn't always accepted. And so the project unfortunately ended there, but we maintained our links with the schools in any case. It was a really important lesson, and it showed us the importance of perhaps trying to embed our own activities in our curriculum. And then there were other knocks at the door that came from the Trading Live for Mandela Day and Week activities. And one was with Mfuzo Boxing Club. I know Mfuzo's on here. And we got involved in strength and conditioning of his athletes there. And that was a really phenomenal experience for our students, and I hope for him. And we've maintained that relationship, albeit that our paths have changed. The other part of the community was the Sakhulutsha Soccer Academy, who Ben will speak about in a bit more detail later on, because this was his journey, where we also did the same. We assisted in physical testing and physical training of soccer players in the local football leagues, as well as the Kulasande Sports Development Trust, which looked at giving kids an opportunity to develop themselves as young sprinters. And this program was really inspirational to us. And this is Tobelo Toba, who was the brain behind it. And he designed this program to really give kids a holistic understanding, or a holistic opportunity to have nutrition, to have good schooling, to be physically trained, and then to be high-performing athletes. And so for us, he was a pathfinder. He was somebody who really showed us how to set things up, how to set up community engagement so that it's effective, holistic, and mutually beneficial. And we assisted him with some of our physical testing facilities and knowledge. And then we had some tipping points in 2015, 2016, 2017. And that was the RU reference list and the fees must fall protests, and all the discourse that came from that amplified, rightly so, issues of social injustice that had continued to pervade in higher education from a long time ago. And although the fees must fall protests and the RU reference list protests were incredibly difficult times in our history as a country and as a university, they also forced us to face really important messages, really important truths, that we needed to focus more on transformation. We needed to focus more on access and equity of opportunity. We need to focus on having open and honest discussions about the scourge of gender-based violence and about transformation of curricula and access to education. And really, that was a tipping point for us. And the lessons we learned, that I learned as a warden on campus and as a lecturer, when I saw how it affected my students, really shaped the ideas that we had about our role as academics and how we need to transform our teaching, our research, and our community engagement. And the ideas from Fees Must Fall and RU reference list and the associated movements were the sticky ideas that were really necessary for us to change the way that we did things. In 2016, I had the privilege of being appointed as a lecturer at the university, and I attended the academic orientation, and I heard our Vice-Chancellor speak about the 4 pillars that should, or the 4 elements that should guide universities' activities. And these were ideas, these were sticky ideas, Vice-Chancellor, that I've never forgotten and that have underpinned all of the activities that we've done in the department. And that's that everything that we do needs to focus on sustainability and ensuring sustainability in the communities that we interact with, in the activities that we do, as well as being locally responsive within Grahamstown, within the Eastern Cape, within South Africa, but also keeping globally engaged and understanding how we can learn globally, but act locally. In addition to that, advancing the public good activities of the university within our immediate context, but also within Makana. And then through all of these activities, advancing social justice. And I hope that some of what we'll speak to today highlights some of the ways in which we've tried to do that. In addition to that, at that academic orientation process, the first time I understood what it meant to try to align community engagement, teaching and learning, and research. And one person that really shaped my views on that was Professor Sunita Srinivas from pharmacy, who's no longer at the university, who showed us how you can actually do community engagement, service learning, and teaching and learning while writing it up in research. And I want to commend Sunita for her mentorship of so many more than just me and the opportunities that she gave us to speak to issues of health as part of the pharmacies. This is at SciFest, pharmacies activities. She got us involved in the health consortium, the Rhodes Health Consortium, which part of which, the roles of which were to educate support staff in the university around health and well-being and how to remain physically active. She also introduced us to the Department of Health, and that enabled us to start to do engaged research with the Department of Health, looking at systemic challenges in healthcare systems in the Baartman district. And so Sunita for me was a pathfinder and really showed us how we could align some of our teaching, learning, research, and community engagement. In addition to that, we met HKE'S, a group who are a non-profit organization based at Warwick Junction in Durban. And there are over 500,000 commuters that go through this junction on a daily basis in Durban. And then in response to that commuting, there are nearly 8,000 informal workers. And really, HKE'S role has been to advocate and support the activities of informal workers to ensure that the work that they do, which is not protected in the way that we would think conventional work is, with occupational health and safety and benefits and sick leave. These are individuals who work for themselves, who work in environments that are really difficult, as you can see there. And we were really inspired by the embedded participatory approach that HKE'S and the likes of WeGo do in these environments. And they really did shape a lot of the activities that we did subsequent to that. And after that, and after interacting with these groups and Sunita and being introduced to the concepts of service learning, mainly through interactions with Kim Weaver and the Center for Biological Control, we started to actually have a go at service learning. And so we tried to disrupt this idea of the classroom by partnering with the Center for Biological Control. And I'll explain how we did that, but just to acknowledge that this is Lulama, who was one of the longest serving employees at the Center for Biological Control, who unfortunately passed away late last year. He was an avid supporter of ergonomics, and he understood the concepts, and he was always very positive when we interacted with him. So it was a privilege to get to know him, and may he rest in peace. But basically, we tried the service learning, which really falls at a pedagogy which looks at integrating community service in a university curriculum. And it allows students to make connections between the theory and the practice that they are learning about. And so it does take time. And I would like to acknowledge Martin Hill and Kim Weaver and the Center for Biological Control for their support and encouragement, because they too are pathfinders. They are also recipients of this award before. And so through our interactions, we learned how to do this. And really what it was sending students up there to work with the workers, to understand work as seen, not work as imagined. And eventually we went up there and we taught the students while we worked with the workers, and we interacted with the workers. And it really was a meaningful way to understand the theory of ergonomics and work at the coalface. In addition to that, it enabled us to actually assess their understanding of these concepts that Andrew's spoken about earlier in the talk. Do they understand them? And from our feedback, they really did. And it came through in the students' reflections, and that, you know, the practical experience is one thing that I personally think a lot of courses lack. It gives you a better idea of what we can do when we leave university. I think the most important one really is at the bottom there, is on working with persons with disabilities and issues of privilege. The team at Vinex said that pity is the last thing that we should feel for them, as they are able to do more than everyone than what everyone would expect of them, because some of these individuals were otherwise able or differently able. They also showed us that they are capable of everything able-bodied people are capable of. They just go about completing the tasks in a different way. And the students would not have got that insight if it hadn't been for the service learning. So I thank Martin for that opportunity. And so we moved from this idea of trading live, to collaborating, and enabled us to contribute to this really important piece in the community engagement in theory and practice, which was edited by Charlie Profitas, who I see is on the call this evening, who was also an instrumental person in shaping how we did things. So thank you, Charlie. It also enabled us to start to write about it, to transform our community engagement, our service learning, and our teaching into some scholarly outputs. And it was a really important lesson, but we realized that we actually didn't do it properly. The reality is that we needed to give back to the CBC, and this was the culmination of it as a workshop that we brought the whole CBC together, and we gave them feedback on our experiences of working up there. From the lessons we learned with the CBC, we shaped and adjusted our service learning approaches to one that was more focused on embedding it in the curriculum and assessing students for the work that they did. And this was done through the Mobile Science Lab, where we taught teachers, or designed a practical for teachers in local schools to teach their students around how to measure heart rate and blood pressure responses and how to graph that data. And so we partnered with the statistics department. So thank you to Jeremy and Amos for that. And the students designed the course, the students taught the teachers, and they were assessed by it. So it was our first proper indication of how we could do service learning properly, until we did the community-based service learning course through RUSE last year, chaired by Jono Davy, who's on here, and that completely blew it out the water. And I would highly recommend this course because it is really inspirational and really eye-opening. And then we moved up to the Eastern Cape Academy of Sports, Sarah Baartman District High Performance Academy, where we started service learning before COVID happened. But this is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to let Ben speak a little bit about his experiences in the community before Andrew comes back to talking about this particular part of our community engagement. So Ben, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Jono, and thank you very much to everyone for attending this evening, and particularly thank you for the kind words at the beginning. As a student, I've been involved with the project since, well, for 8 years now. And so we believe that I've got some interesting reflections and ideas for how we've evolved the project and how we've put these plans in place and developed community relations. How it all began is essentially, for me, my research in honors, looking at kicking in football, which is a very reductionist approach, very lab-based. And so for my master's, I wanted to expand that and look into actually interacting with the community. And so I had a hamstring intervention with a local club that over the course of my experimentation actually did work. But when I went back a few weeks after completing the data collection, the players were no longer doing the exercise, which I'd proved it worked. And so it became obvious that I had taken a very, an inappropriate approach to the problem. I had superimposed it on the community. And so that meant that we really needed to interrogate what community engagement meant, what it meant to actually be involved with the community and actually understand their context or our context, and really get to grips with making a meaningful impact. The next slide, please. With that in mind, we were actually fortunate enough to get a knock at the door, as Jono said, which was the Sakhulutsha Soccer Academy, who came to us looking for help with strength and conditioning. And so in order for me to understand the local football community a bit more, it seemed like a wonderful opportunity to get on the ground. And so it all began up underneath the electricity wires on a patch of ground, not a field, working with the team 3 times a week, starting to apply some of the knowledge that I'd learned in HKE. Fortunately, as this project was moving forward, we got some other students coming into the postgrad cohort who are also interested in being involved, and we've got Gavin and Ashley up at the top right there, who then also contributed to those sessions. And then we started to build relationships with the team, and also getting a really good understanding of the reality of football in Makana. So we're actually training there at JD Stadium, which is the football hub, and applying our HKE knowledge. So we're starting to get an idea of how we can actually put it into practice and link that theory that we've been learning. Similar to what Jono has already said, we had developed some experience in terms of testing players. And so at the bottom left there, we can see us putting that into practice again with the postgrad cohort. And this informed our ability to develop proper training programs for the club. And then also working with the youth players, which is then down on the right, where we're starting to then monitor players throughout their involvement with the program over a number of years. And so then we could actually see the progress and the impact that we were making through our strength and conditioning programs. Next slide, please. While this was happening, so we had our football program on the go, we also had other students coming into the postgrad cohort who were interested in other sports. And so this was a nice opportunity to expand and interact with additional community partners. So we had students interacting with the rugby community, and that involved us attending AGMs and starting to build relationships and understanding more about the constraints and opportunities within local rugby. Similarly, we had students interested in mixed martial arts and boxing, and so we had students moving into that area within the local community, all the time offering up their expertise from their curriculum and actually contributing to the strength and conditioning of the sportsmen involved in those programs. Another interesting branch out was when we interacted with the Department of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture and actually did an analysis of grassroots sports administration. And that really gave us fantastic insight into who the important stakeholders are and how sport really operates within the Makana community. Next slide, please. With that in mind, I then shifted my approach for my PhD research to now looking into organizational aspects of local football. So in 2017, I attended the AGM and was lucky enough to get elected as the treasurer. I'm not sure if you can see me in the picture there. But for that, I'm always going to be grateful to the Sakhulutsha coach who facilitated that. But what that allowed me was to actually become literally embedded in that football community. And it's important to note that that does come with large responsibilities, because now you do have an important role to play in actually making sure that the programs work. And so it was quite daunting, do feel quite isolated. But the beauty of it was that I wasn't going in with a preconceived research question. And I think that was the key. I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. And so then I wasn't looking for anything in particular. It was just to experience that footballing community and start to understand the constraints and affordances that exist. So I served for 3 years as the treasurer, as also as the competitions chairperson, and we actually ran 5 leagues for over 1,000 players. And what was cool is that we could actually use simple Rhodes resources such as internet and meeting venues to help out the LFA, and then build our relationship, build credibility, and most importantly, build trust with local stakeholders. And then we could also introduce other younger students into those committees, which was a fantastic opportunity for them to then embed themselves to inform their future research. Next slide, please. With that in mind, over that time, I built those relationships, and I shifted from being the random white guy to then being Ben as a part and parcel of that community. And that was such an empowering and enlightening experience, in that you then can get true insight, you get an open dialogue, mutually beneficial discussions about what I could offer and what, most importantly, what the community members and administrators could offer me. And I think that's a key lesson that we learned, is that idea of agency and what it means to be an expert, is that I'm not an expert about Makana football. The people who run it and have spent decades working in it are the experts. And so then my research question became, let's see how the organization actually works in the local football association. And so I could apply the ergonomics knowledge and complex systems tools to then understanding the organization, identifying barriers and opportunities, and then that can inform the future research, thus making it a sustainable research program where you have students building on the previous work. Next slide, please. So that's key. The key element of that is the sustainability. And I'm happy to say that the program that started with the Sakhulutsha Football Club is still running. It's been 5 years and is now focusing on physical activity. We have students from undergraduate, non-HKE students, postgraduates, honors students are also intertwined through the service learning courses. And we've also got additional sports coming through. And a fantastic revelation is the development of students. So we've had students come through the program working for 3 years who are now the leaders of that program, and they have a drive to transform it and turn it into what they want. So now we've introduced netball and indigenous games, and so that's the beauty of these kinds of programs, building on that sustainability and the development of the students. So now I'm just going to hand back to Andrew, who can tie it all together.
Thank you very much, Ben. And thank you for sharing honesty with your experiences, and from being vulnerable to being part of community, I think is a very good lesson for all of us. I just want to tie it all together to give some more insights. I'm actually sitting in my office right now, looking out over Joza, the beautiful sunlight shining on it. And what we have in this picture that's on this slide is the realization that we had many opportunities in our city. And in particular, what we have here is the old indoor center and the new gym that has been built up in Joza. And we have to actually acknowledge the Makana municipality, and in particular Jeff Budaza, for sourcing the funding for these very important resources in Joza for the community. But one of the issues and frustrations that Jeff had was that we now had a venue, but we didn't have, as a city, sufficient resources to be able to actually use these resources and to provide a safe environment for community members to be able to come and utilize these resources. And so they remained dormant for several years, which obviously for the Makana municipality was a big frustration. Fortunately, over the work that we had been doing in the communications and building of partnerships with various people within the community, in 2017, we made contact with the Eastern Cape Academy of Sport. And really in the beginning, the Eastern Cape Academy of Sport was interested in how HKE department can help them with their athletes. And so we had some discussions around that. Yes, they can come onto campus. Yes, we can work with them. And we had then a broader stakeholder meeting in the March of 2018, where now it wasn't only ECAS and HKE, we brought in other Rhodes University stakeholders, and we brought in the Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture. And we started to discuss how we can provide equity of opportunity and how we can really start to provide services for all athletes within the Makanda and broader SARA Baartman region. And between March and August, so this idea of a SARA Baartman Academy started to form. And it became a dream, and we managed to get more stakeholders on board, and particularly through the work of the Eastern Cape Academy of Sport, with their links to the National Lottery and to Nelson Mandela University. In the February of 2019, we were able to formally start to put together the concept of an academy. And on the 26th of February 2019, the Eastern Cape Academy of Sport, SARA Baartman District, was born, which really was the culmination of work of many different stakeholders to bring together and to make a resource that had been dormant into one that actually was there for community to be able to use. The role of the HKE department within the SARA Baartman Academy was to develop talented athletes through the provision of sports science, through service learning, and I'll get to that shortly, and also to provide training opportunities for not only the athletes, but also coaches, administrators, and technical staff. And just to give you an example from some of the work that we had done with the local football association, of 25 to 27 clubs focused on 1,000 children, which is an incredible number of children being exposed to the sport. Only 2 of the coaches in those clubs had any formal soccer coaching qualifications. even less had any strength and conditioning qualifications. And so between that and some of the other stakeholders, and I'm glad to see Dion Hilpert is here from CEDRU, the idea of building capacity became a key concept here. It's not about HKE providing a service. It's actually about HKE designing themselves out the system and people being able to do for themselves. And really what our dream as a department was equity of all in the SARA Baartman, equity of opportunity for all within our region. And it is something that has, and you've seen this thread coming through, driven our research paradigm and the research work that we do to ensure it doesn't matter who you are, what background you are from within Makana, that you have an opportunity. And not only that, and I'll never forget Zandi, one of our third-year students, who was actually an honor student at the time, speaking during Fees Must Fall, a local Makana student from Joza, talking about how the university was the promised land on the other side of town. And that if only you could get there, you might be able to make something of yourself. And that has stuck with me through all these years. And to have the SARA Baartman Academy, which is located within Joza, there is now hope not just across town, but also within town. I am proud to say that through this initiative, we no longer are just based on the university on the other side of town, but we are now embedded with office space as an academic department, doing work that is based within community. We are not sitting on Rhodes' beautiful campus, but are actively involved and are located and positioned where we need to be doing the work within context, embedded. And how we did that, and this is the first group of students that did embedded service learning. So this group of students was the first that worked every afternoon up at the High Performance Center, providing opportunities for athletes, for coaches to work with them and to build strength and conditioning programs and whatever else the needs were. And we really are thankful to this group of students who were brave enough to go and to work in a new environment for us. We also started to work with coaches. Here, Jono is doing an introduction to training principles and safety for coaches within the various sporting codes. So we had coaches from a variety, from netball to soccer to rugby to boxing, you name it, involved in being inducted into the use and the safe use of the academy. At the same time, we are working with ECAS on the school's capacity project. And here are just some pictures where we would go and work with schools and with the coaches from the schools and with the athletes from the schools and provide them with equipment that they could have and keep at the schools, demonstrating the use of all of them, the variety of different activities they could do, so that the schools can now use these on their own, provided with appropriate education and the appropriate tools. The school is now able to provide their athletes with the adequate resources on their own without the need to continue to refer to the HKE department. Through all of this, one of the key things that we were striving to try and do, as Jono highlighted earlier, around this idea actually that teaching and learning is not separate from research and it's not separate from community engagement. And really what we are looking at when it came to building capacity was actually acknowledging that our capacity as academics needed to be developed as well. That our capacity to understand what it means to be locally responsive needed to be developed. And the beauty of working with community was that we were able to go on this journey. And what we realized is that when we have agency and we give agency to everyone that we're working with, everyone in the system learns. There's development of community, there's development of students, and there's development of us. And really what it has resulted in is the building of capacity of all that are involved in these projects. From that, we tried to develop a model. And here was our first kind of idea of a model is if we have engaged research where we are identifying needs, we can feed these needs into our curriculum and into our service learning, which results in emergent characteristics. The system changes, and therefore we need to research how the system changes. And so we go on this continual cycle. And through this cycle, what we're able to do is to shift the idea of a classroom and where a classroom is Our students no longer sit here on Rhodes campus and have me talking to them. They are active within community, up in Joza, learning hands-on what it means to understand context that people are doing physical activity and where they are doing work as done, not as imagined, as Jono mentioned earlier. To really get students and ourselves as academics to understand what it means to have an engaged citizenship. One of the issues, however, is how do we now create this into something that is sustainable? And so through Ben's PhD, we came up with this model here, where we focus on capacity building and improved alignment between community engagement, teaching and learning, and engaged research. What we have at the bottom here is the acknowledgement of where the system's performance is now. So if you remember at the beginning, we spoke about we want to understand where performance is and to improve performance. So the engaged research understands where are we at? How do we improve it? This is how we improve it. We improve it through community engagement and service learning that is embedded in our teaching and learning curriculum. What that does is move systems performance from here to here. At that point, the student who is studying here can exit the program. But the program is sustainable because we have other students in the program and we have new students entering the program. Engaged research identifies where performance is now, and so the cycle continues. So slowly but surely, performance of the system gets better. Us as academics get better, the system's performance improves. I'm tremendously proud to say we have graduated, I think, 6 students already through this program, and we have 12 students all doing embedded, engaged research that feeds into our service learning modules, that feeds into our community engagement. And it is really, from my side, these people, these students who drive this program for us. And I would be amiss if I didn't say how proud I am of the work that they do for us. It is outstanding. And it really is them that really brings this model to life. All that leaves for us to do now is to have some closing thoughts. We've painted it and it seems relatively easy, but there are some stumbling blocks along the way. And critical questions of who do we work with, how do we work with them, how much do we do, are all very difficult questions to answer. How do we manage stakeholder relationships? How do we manage financial sustainability? How do we get students? There are many, many problems. We also are an incredibly small department, just 5 academic staff trying to do all of this all of the time. Also the pain of a new idea. Saying to a student, no, you can't do your research in the department. I'm going to ask you to go within community, to engage with people, to work with people. Is scary and difficult. And so all of these are challenges. But really, through these challenges, we also had many lessons that we learned. And the first lesson was that we needed to start somewhere, anywhere. Find a knock. There are lots of knocks if you look for them. And also learn from those that have gone before. Jono showed that beautifully. How much of what we do, we've been able to rely on Rhodes community engagement and their most outstanding staff. They do it for a living. They understand the stuff. Simply ask, and they'll be more than happy to help you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are many people who've gone before us. Learn from them. Trust them to guide you. Be happy being uncomfortable. It's an important component. We tell our students this all the time. I know it's very important to be uncomfortable. This is a safe space. Be uncomfortable. It's okay. Well, I think sometimes as academics, we need to take that call on ourselves and also be comfortable being uncomfortable. Acknowledge community expertise. Ben highlighted that beautifully. Most of the time, we have no idea what we are doing, and community know 10 times better than we do. Trust your community partners. Work with them to develop the problems. It is key. For us to be embedded and to be working within community rather than on community is absolutely vital. To do that, we need to be reflexive, not only reflective, but also reflexive, to respond when we've messed it up. We've been to many meetings where we have been clearly told, Rhodes University, we do not trust you. You come and research on us and you disappear again. How do I reflect on that? How do I be reflexive to that? And it is why we are still going towards, because in some of our partnerships, we're still working on that. How do we get to be trusted as a reliable embedded partner? And then lastly, to really work on how you can align your teaching and learning, your research and your community engagement. And for us, in order to do that, our real reflection has been, it's taken many years. It's taken much time. It really has been a work of time. So please, when you start, don't give up, persevere, and eventually some good will come out of it. Ultimately, we've got two take-home messages. Number one, what makes it work? People. It's as simple as that. In a country like ours, in systems like this, it is the people, the people, the people. And you'll see here the logos of most of the community partners that we have worked with. The Grahamstown Business Forum, for example. Amazing groups that when you put yourselves out there, are willing to work with you, are doing amazing work, and it's merely about figuring out how do we add value to programs that are already out there doing an amazing job. So to all of our community partners, from us as the HKE department, a very, very heartfelt thank you. You are truly, truly special and amazing to us. Our take-home message from working with people is this. If you have come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you recognize that your liberation and mine are bound up together, we can walk together. With that, we would like to thank you very much and to acknowledge the amazing HKE staff and the HKE students who do all the work, and we are lucky enough to be able to get the recognition for the things that they do. So from me, Ben and Jono, a very big thank you. It is a huge privilege and an honor for us to have received this award from the Vice-Chancellor. Thank you very much.
We're not going to keep you away from your dinner, but we do have a few thank yous to say before we close this evening. So thank you to the conferencing office, to Benita Rama and Charmaine Avery for organizing and facilitating this lecture, and to Prof. Monapula Mapetsela for introducing the speaker. To all those of you who've taken time out to celebrate with our HKE team tonight, we're very grateful for your time and participation. This week, many of the ROO staff were involved in an international summit on university social responsibility, and the keynote speaker, Professor Chris Brink, the ex-Vice-Chancellor of Newcastle University, spoke of the influences of the pandemic and the changing mission of higher education. And he started his presentation with two questions. He said, what are you good at and what are you good for? He went on to say, generally, lecturers and researchers found the first question really easy to answer, what they were good at, but they often struggled with the second. What are they good for? And I share this with you tonight because I think this team of academics can answer both questions very eloquently. There is no doubting that the work that they have undertaken has impacted the community of Makanda and been influential in the national and international space. They know what they're good at, and they know that they have served the public good through their academic project and discipline. They have taken their knowledge and theories out of the academy, found fertile ground in suitable community partners. They have built mutually beneficial relationships, and they've tested, co-created, and reworked knowledge, and in so doing greatly enriched not only themselves, as you heard tonight, but their community partner organizations as well. Their students will also have benefited greatly. They will leave this university with not only a certificate, but also as well-rounded critical thinkers who with their social awareness will be the transformative leaders our country so desperately needs. Thank you, Jono. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Ben, for this honest account. Honestly, your journey has been an inspiration to us all. Lastly, thank you to the families of Ben, Andrew, and Jono for supporting your husbands, your sons, and in some cases, your dad, to do this important and meaningful work. That concludes our proceedings for tonight. Thank you once again for celebrating with us this evening, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you very much, Charmaine.
Thank you for your kind words, Di.
Indeed.
Well done, guys. Wow. So inspirational.
Well done. We are so proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Yes, we will do. Thank you.
Amazing.
We'll see. I'll send you a copy of the recording in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
Bye.
This is absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone.
amazing.
Thank you all.
Got a few words?
Well done, guys. It's really incredible. So inspiring and so proud of you. Thank you to you all. This is what it means to be human, to be fully human. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, all.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Charmaine.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank you, Di.
Enjoy
Well
your dinner.
done, guys.